Hey, kia ora, good morning everyone. I'm now here in Muriwai, out in West Auckland today because I want to come here and take some photo with the Laowa 15 f2.0D lens, which I have in my bag right now, and I can't take it out because I have no hand right now. So yeah, just want to take some photo here, landscape photo here, before we head back and look at the other things like image quality, build quality and things like that. So yep, let's go and take some photo first. Okay, now let's talk about this Laowa 15mm f2.0D lens a little bit more. So this lens, it is not exactly a new lens. The original version was released I think about 2 years ago, and recently they have just released a new version, the new one for the Nikon Z man, and that's the one that I have been using over the last couple of weeks, including my trip to Muriwai was shooting using this lens. So talk about the build quality first. The build quality is very nice, very solid, just like most of the Laowa lens. Metal construction, everything fit together very nicely. It is a fully mechanical manual lens, so there is no electronic components and there's no electronic contacts on the lens as well. So when you take photo, the camera wouldn't be able to record the EF data from the lens. I have mentioned before, but I want to mention one more time in this review, is that I really like the Laowa lens design. It looks very nice, but more importantly, what I really like is that their lenses has a very unique design. So if you look at the lens, then you would know that this is a Laowa lens. So this is something that most of the Chinese optics manufacturers still haven't been able to do. Most of them are still just trying to copy the design from other manufacturers, while Laowa is probably one of the very few Chinese companies that managed to already create their own design and own identity for their lenses. We have the Manifold Ring at the top of the lens. The ring itself feels very nice and it is buttery smooth. The travel distance from the closest focus distance, which is 0.15 meter to infinity, is just over 90 degrees. So it is not really long. So you do have to be careful when you are adjusting focus, especially when you are shooting at the maximum aperture f2. And below the Manifold Ring, we have the Aperture Ring here. And one thing that I really like about this Laowa lens is that, look at here, there is a switch here which allow you to turn the Aperture Ring between the click or declick mode. So for myself, over the last couple of weeks, most of the time I just flick the switch to the click position, which allow the Aperture Ring to have clicks when I'm adjusting it, which is something that I personally really like. But if you are a videographer, I understand that you probably want to have it declicked, so that allow you to have a smoother aperture transition when you are taking video. My only minor complaint is that the switch itself doesn't feel quite as nice or as strong as the rest of the lens. As I just mentioned before, the closest focus distance of this lens is only 15 cm, which is I think just under 6 inch. So you definitely can use this lens to do some close-up photography. And when you are shooting close-up object, because it has a pretty large f2 aperture, so you could actually dissolve the background into some very nice and smooth bokeh. If you mount this Laowa lens onto one of the Nikon APS-C Z mirrorless camera, the equivalent focal length would now become around 23mm. So it is no longer an ultra wide angle lens. Instead, it becomes quite a versatile wide angle everyday lens. The lens comes with a reversible metal lens hood, which provides pretty good optical and physical protection. One thing you have to be a little bit careful about the lens hood is that when you mount the lens hood onto the lens, because it doesn't have a click at the end, so it is possible that you may bump the lens hood a little bit, especially when you put the camera into your camera bag and then pull it out. The lens hood may rotate a little bit, so yeah, when that happens, then there will be a bit of dark black corner in your photo, which you probably will notice it quite easily if that happens. So yeah, it's just something that you have to be a bit careful when you are shooting with this lens. The lens has a 72mm front filter thread, which is excellent for landscape photographer because it allows them to install filter onto the lens very easily. Okay, now let's talk a little bit more about the image quality, and let's start by looking at the center sharpness. The center sharpness is very good even at the maximum aperture f2. If you stop down to f2.8, then the center sharpness becomes excellent. And now if you look at the edges of the frame, at the maximum aperture, then the edges is a little bit soft. If you stop down to around f2.8, f4, then the edge sharpness will improve quite a bit, and the maximum sharpness seems to be at around f5.6. If you are a landscape photographer who loves sunstars, stop down the lens to around f5.6 to f8. Then you can start see some nice sunstars in your photo. And if you keep stopping down the lens to the minimum aperture f22, then you can have some very nice and very crispy sunstars in your photo. Laowa called this lens a 0D lens, which means there is zero distortion. And I think they are mostly right. And what I mean is that when I look at my brick wall test photos, I do see a little bit of distortion in some of my test photos. Having said that, the amount of distortion is actually very minimal and almost zero, but just not exactly zero. And in comparison to the other wide angle lens that I have tested, this Laowa 15mm f2.0D lens definitely has a lot less distortion than all the other lenses that I have tested recently. Chromatic aberration is very well controlled. Even when I check the photos that I shot at the maximum aperture and just directly into the sun with some tree branches in front of the sun, and I still see virtually no color fringing at all, so that is very surprising and pleasantly surprising how well Laowa managed to control the chromatic aberration with this lens. And lens flare is also very well controlled. Look at all these photos that I shot with the sun right in front of the lens. You can see that there is very minimal amount of lens flare in all these photos. That is definitely very impressive and also very useful for such a wide angle lens that a lot of people will be using it to take landscape photos. Next, let's talk about vignetting. Unfortunately, I think vignetting is probably the biggest weakness of this lens. At the maximum aperture f2, you can definitely see there is quite a bit of vignetting near the edge of the frame. When I stop down the lens to f2.8 and f4, the light fall off is still quite noticeable near the edge of the frame, and even when I stop down to f5.6, you can still see a bit of vignetting near the corner and edge of the photo. So if you are going to use this lens to take some landscape photo and you don't like vignetting, be prepared that when you are doing the post-processing, you need to spend a little bit of time to remove or minimize vignetting. Overall, I think this is another very solid product from Laowa. The build quality, the design of the lens is fantastic. I really love how smooth the manifold ring is, and of course I love the to be able to switch between the click and declick for the aperture ring. This is something that I really like. And in terms of the image quality, I think apart from the vignetting, which is a bit more than what I would like, everything else is very good. The sharpness is pretty good. Even the corner sharpness, while it is a little bit soft at the maximum aperture, if you stop down a little bit, that it becomes pretty good. good already, and the distortion is definitely very well controlled, and I'm just very impressed by how well Laowa managed to control the chromatic aberration and lens flare with this lens. If you are a Nikon Z camera shooter and looking at buying a wide-angle lens for landscape photography, then you definitely should check out this Laowa 15mm f2.0D lens. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video or find this video useful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you have any question about this lens, please feel free to drop a comment below and I will try to answer your questions. Thanks again for watching this video and I'll see you in my next video.